Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the War Table Podcast. I am your host, Don Cid, and with me, as usual, I have my two co-hosts, the one, the only, Solgaleo, and not only that, our other favorite secondary co-host, Rook Withakay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully, we have gotten to the point that we have been trying to get to for so very, very long. The end of the spotlight on Soupy now, I guess, yeah. This is we're talking about the class strengths, class weaknesses, and where we generally find that each class kind of falls on as a body, or I guess as a podcast, on each of the caster classes and each of the classes in Amtgard as a whole. So last week we did Druid and Bard. Today we are doing Healer and Wizard, so the two other casters. So as usual, we'll be going over the strengths and weaknesses of the class, what some of their interesting archetypes and interactions you might see on the field, and where we generally think that these classes kind of fit into composition and how most people tend to kind of play them, and ways to kind of guide you on your journey to play these classes and figure them out. Without further ado, let's get started with Healer. All three of us play Healer pretty consistently, and we vary on how we play it, I would say. Sound about right?
For sure.
Yep. Yeah. Rook, you tend to play a little bit more closer to the front, lean more on Warder, very much kind of like lead from the front, help out, set up line fights.
I'm more of a fighter, and I spent my second and third years of Amtgard playing Paladin. So when I moved over to Healer, I treat Healer as a more caster-focused Paladin. That's how I play it. It's unconventional. It's more useful in small park settings, and sometimes can be pretty strong in kingdom battlefields, but not nearly as strong as a standard healer. But it works for what I do.
And that's one of the things that I think people should kind of understand when you're looking at these classes. And it's kind of ubiquitous with all of them, that the scale with which you participate in a game and the scale with which you play is going to determine that strength and how you can kind of make that class your own. Some barbarians tend to play very frontline, very much relying on the rage to kind of break through when they wouldn't otherwise, or, others will kind of use archetypes or more of a flanky play style as a way to kind of circumvent a lot of the free dive potential that you got back when Fight After Death was still a thing. But it's very much figuring out how to make a class and fit the niche in the kind of way that you play. Healer, as it stands right now, I think is the class that lets you do that the most. Outside of just raw having pure killing power and spells, the class lets you pretty much do anything you want to. Leo plays a very far back style and puts out fires where he needs to. So either res botting, running up to fronts or midline and trying to release people, get people out of trouble. You have folks who tend to play towards the front line, like Sir Goose. Abeja plays frontline healer very well. Sir Cookie Monster does it very well, where you're very much kind of playing just Paladin without the armor, and I guess without Martyr as well, and just kind of generally playing preventative medicine by giving as much protection and making that line so much harder to kind of push out and make your force so much more sticky than they would be otherwise. To get on to the actual understanding of just how strong Healer is with being able to let you kind of fill out a niche, I want to kind of get into the general positions you can find with this class. And generally, I would say there's about three, and you two can kind of disagree with me on this otherwise. You have Frontline Healer, Sword and Board, normally sometimes takes Warder, most of the time will go like Priest, is Eric's style of play. Stick to the front, keep the line together, and make sure that your unit is always combat capable at all moments. Perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. Maybe sometimes you'll see them trade out the swords for ice balls or entangles, maybe in abeyance, if boards aren't necessarily like prevalent. But their job is, first and foremost, work with their own squad and defend yourself where you have to. Then you have the midline. Similar, but they have a little bit more of a focus on casting. They don't tend to run with weapons as often, but their primary job is keep their team up, but also deal with problems on the opposing side. Do you have to deal with teleporting players? Cool, you have Banish for that. Do you need to deal with Evoker Wizards? You have Greater Release for that. Do you have to deal with very problematic targets, normally get out of the way of getting dispelled? Sever Spirit deals with that problem perfectly fine. Like, you have every means of solving every problem in midline healer, and your job is just trying to figure out where those holes are and making sure your list is general enough that you can kind of figure out the problems before they become a problem, like a game-ending problem. So that means, like, your experience are probably going to go on Dispel Magic because now it's a 4th level spell. Greater Release likely, or Mend is also a really good choice for it. You're going to be very much kind of finding holes to plug in. I once had it described to me that midline healer is ostensibly playing the paramedic. You find fires and you fight fires and you run in, solve the problem, get the fuck out before it becomes a problem for you, before you're in danger. Finally, you have backline. Backline is where I would say is the least interesting in what healer plays. In terms of list building, it's Resbot. It means playing all the way by spawn, making sure that you're charging your Summon Corpse and your Raise Dead, making sure to know when you can blow a GR to get a curse through, making sure when you can use either Raise Dead or Resurrect, and kind of like figuring out your rotation. And that aspect of the class is very much just understanding rotation building and knowing when you can charge and when you have time to charge and when it's time to blow what spells at what time. Very different skill set. Huh? I'm sorry.
It's the one class in the game where the two forms of equipment that you're going to want to bring on the field with you is lozenges and a bottle of water.
Oh, dude, it's absolutely that.
As
It
someone
killed
who,
me.
Yeah, and I know Sid can attest to that.
as someone who had to play Resbot healer at Spring War, I did in fact get approached by a group of people who were handing out lozenges and water, and I did in fact pack multiple lozenges for that trip because one, I was coming off of a cold and I was already not feeling well, and two, I was playing backline healer, and my throat was in pain after every game.
You'd also done Bardic the night before too.
Hardly.
You did it. But yeah.
But still.
In short, backline bard is where you choose to blow your vocal cords out because you're sitting there for 40 minutes casting nonstop. Now, mind you, there's variations on all three of these, and I think I got them pretty well. I think that those are pretty decent explanations of what we generally see healer do. What do you two think?
So I just wanted to make a little bit of a correction on how you described my style of healer. I think I'm a good fighter. And, with that comes an understanding that I can't face every threat. And I don't think frontline healer should necessarily be on the front lines because you don't have a lot sustaining you in the front line, right? So when I think of who's on the front line, I think of a 6-point warrior. I think of a monk with a pole. I think barbarian with some level of armor and that armor breaking, shield crushing, right? All these different threats that a healer with no enchantments, no armor, isn't really going to have an easy time facing that head on. When I played healer on the Kingdom battlefield, I did not want to be in the back, constantly throwing out heals and constantly throwing out all these different things. I had resources to give out, which is my mends, my releases. I did have heal, but I played more of a flanker role, and the only reason I'm able to get away with the flanker role is because I had warder. I put a persistent enlightened soul on anyone with a shield, persistent protection from projectiles on anyone without a shield. I'm trying to sort of minimize the rest of my team's threats by doing that. Anyone who's played Florentine with any class, doesn't even matter if you're a monk, knows that threat of getting hit in the chest by an arrow. It sucks. So, when I pick warder healer, I'm just trying to fill up whatever gaps my team has, is just give them the enchantments that is going to have the most impact on them so that once they get into the battlefield, there's a lot less threats the enemy team can provide. I know a lot of wizards love to just cast Finger of Death, spam shoves, all these things. You have an enlightened soul on you, a lot of those kind of go away. Dispel magic is still a big issue for sure, but now that means if I'm charging a wizard and they have to focus on dispelling magic on me, they are not shoving me, they are not hating my weapon, and I'm going to win that engagement because I'm spending my enchantment to charge them. Back to how I'm actually using healer after I've spent all my enchantments and my whole team is ready to continue fighting, I am not going to fight the best fighter on their team. That's a surefire way to lose. It doesn't matter like what your skill level is at. If you have 2 points of armor all over your body, I'm not even saying, right, 6-point warrior, because that for sure is a losing fight. But if you even have 2 points of armor all over you, if I go into an engagement against you, I'm just not winning. It doesn't matter like where your skill level is. All it takes is one trade, whether you take my arm, my leg, I'm losing the fight. So I stick to flanks. I stick to the far left if I'm trying to pull enemy aggro, or I stick to the far right because I'm trying to get backs. I'm trying to create these types of threats. And then once I circle back to my team, that's when, okay, now I'm focused on, I'm going to get back to my healing, get back to my mending, my releasing. And then once I've provided the resources to my team, then I'm going back and creating threats again. Again, this is my style of healer. I don't think it's the most viable, but this is what works for me because I'm very much a type of person who prefers fighting rather than just staying hard focused on casting. I think caster healer is 1,000% better. It's also like playing to your strengths, and I'm using what my strengths are, which is creating some kind of battlefield presence, but still, you know, having spells and things along those lines is still really, really important.
Very opposite of Rook, I am not a great fighter, so I play to my strengths are that I can talk a lot, long period of time, which is why I love playing backline. Because I will say the thing that I've really liked about healer is similar to Bard, talking so much, I feel like I'm doing so much. Sometimes with Bard, all that talking doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's like I'm charging up other people's stuff. If they use it, cool. If not, I gotta hope. With healer, you are actively breaking one of the biggest economies in the game, which is people's lives and respawns the death economy as you are continuously resurrecting people, especially with those pesky long respawn times. It's so awesome and it feels so rewarding to just look at your team who's half dead and go, actually, get back out there, champ. I believe in you. Go get him, Sport. Go get him, Tiger. Just for the line of 20 people, and then you sit there twiddling your thumbs charging up for a few minutes, which I personally have no problem with because I think it's fun. However, in terms of where healer sits as a whole, in terms of Soupy, healer's the best caster. Healer's not my favorite caster. Healer's the best caster, I feel, because they're so versatile. They have some amazing enchantments. Even though they don't have as many enchantments as Druid has, they have amazing enchantments. You could do literally anything. You're better at breaking the death economy. The enchantments you have are still fantastic. You can still interact with other players. You can still fight super easy. You're not going to be as tanky as an Avatar Nature Druid, and you don't have any instant kill spells like a wizard does, but you have basically everything the fuck else. You have basically an answer to every problem that pops up on the field. And if you don't have an answer, it's not your job. And it's not any other caster's job either. So, some of the stuff they get at level 1, which healer has a very friendly leveling system to new players. Like, if you're new to casters, healers, at this point, probably my recommendation for people to start with, as much as that pains me. Because their level 1 is so much easier now that, 1, the healing can't is easier. You have to learn the resurrect and can't later on at level, 3? Sure. But at that point, you know how to cast spells. You'll probably be fine to learn resurrect. It'll still take you a minute, but at least you have your foot in the door with I know how to cast things. And at least you're out of combat most of the time, so learning resurrect doesn't feel like as much of a hurdle as casting a spell on an enemy player. But you get your small shield and short right off the bat, you get banish, your release is chargeable by default, you have unlimited heals, you have harden at level 1, it's fantastic. You have Sever Spirit, you have Dispel Magic, Sever Spirit's chargeable by default. So many things that healer has are chargeable by default when you buy them, which in my opinion is kind of ridiculous. It's beautiful. It's like, cool, since half your stuff is chargeable anyways or per life, it's like you only have to experience some of your really good stuff like Dispel Magic or...
Dispel, Mend, or Greater Release are the 3 normally.
Yeah,
but I know
or
some
Charge,
people,
was the other
like,
one I was looking for.
yeah, I wonder.
No, I take Greater Release on healer. I don't want to hear it. I don't take it on Bard, but I always take it on healer. Like, their leveling Their level progression is a lot better than, honestly, Druid and Wizard's level progression is really difficult, I feel, especially if you're brand new to casters. If you're not, then it's not too bad, but their level progression is a lot easier. Everything kind of flows into each other. You can do basically anything. It is the Swiss Army knife of casters now, which used to be Druid, and everyone was like, oh my god, you have to nerf Druid, Druid's so broken. And then they basically made Healer the new Druid in terms of how broken it is. So
The problem ended up being is that healer got easier to play. Healer got more answers to the problem that was Druid, and they didn't really fix the problems that healer presented to the game in terms of breaking the death economy, breaking the spell slot economy, and how it kind of interacts with both of those systems. So it's just the class does everything. It is literally the proverbial Swiss Army knife. If only your Swiss Army knife could also be a gun, a new car, a submarine, and a plane all at the same time, whenever you need it. It is the Inspector Gadget of Amtgard classes. It is absolute insanity.
yeah, also one thing is that I feel like Healer, despite like everything that is fantastic about it, the only thing that always feels a little weird to me with Healer is that I feel like it's easier to play Warder style without the Warder archetype.
Yeah, I agree. Warder pigeonholes the player a lot,
Let's be
and
real.
it kind of forces you.
Every class has at least one dud archetype. And even then, Warder isn't a dud. Warder's not bad by any means. It's just the least good, I guess.
Yeah, you definitely sacrifice a lot to be able to play Warder. I mean, at least for my play style of just, I'm not worried about all my spells. I'm not worried about, I'm not bringing ice balls. I'm not bringing any other threats outside of buffing the life out of my team, bringing some shoves. It very much pigeonholes you. But considering you still have access to spirit and protection, like I think those are the main focuses of healer is, your heals, your enchants. You just have the most influence on the field as a healer compared to any other class. I think even saying that Warder is the worst archetype of healer, I understand that, but I still think it's better than any of the other classes in the game.
The idea here that healer agency is as high as it is the first thing you need to understand is that healer gets to do this in both an active and a passive role. Not only can they just go and sit there in the back, twiddle their fucking thumbs, and then just resurrect most of their team, and we're gonna get to some of the things you should and should not do as a healer. The other way, the passive way of doing it, outside of just the raw, just set it and forget it enchantments, is abusing things like Undead Minion. Undead Minion in its current state as it stands right now is probably one of the single most busted abilities in the entire game.
Yeah.
Reason being able to have a unsuppressed caster be an undead minion. Sure, they can't resurrect, but boo-hoo. I have a variable smorgasbord of guys that I can have come right up. I do Rise of Fight again, Rise of Fight, Rise of Fight again, and just smack them on the ass and send them out to go on their way. The fact that I can keep tempo going, and depending on the class, because keep in mind, after they're resurrected afterwards, they're suppressed for 30 seconds. Cool, I have release. It's chargeable. I can get it done. It's not even a problem. I've even seen people who they'll do it is before they get cursed, when they put their undead minion, or before they use a raise dead on a person, they'll actively curse them on purpose. I think if I remember correctly, I think Manima mentioned it. You could just curse your own friends so you can get your other spell slots back to fuel your own engine to keep going.
Yeah,
Undead Minion creates such toxic game environments that allows you to just kind of keep the horde going, and it does so in a way that's really, really broken comparatively to like Druid, because part of the swarm, you still have to go there, you still have to wait out your respawn time. Golems still have to wait out their respawn time. Undead Minion does not have that. Not only that, Undead Minion is cursed, so that bypasses one of the biggest counters that Undead Minion normally used to have, especially if you put it on classes that have a lot of slipperiness. Yeah, like Assassin. The only problem is that Assassin loses a lot of has to kind of jump through some hoops, so to speak, because you lose all your per lives, because you don't get them back, because you can't respawn.
Unless you're playing Spy.
And then most of your stuff is chargeable. So I'm like, okay.
You just have to be a little bit more frugal with your teleports, but that's about it.
I mean, your blinks and shadow steps should be enough to get you through. This is just something that you'll see happen as like classes that don't necessarily that get a lot of passive value just because of their immunities. Like for instance, I don't know, monks, great undead minion target. Yeah. Certain mage or certain caster classes also make for very good undead minion targets. anything that doesn't have to worry about armor, because, dying, and there's gonna be a transition to the next point. Anything that doesn't have to require a large amount of mends for their armor keeps the tempo up. And that's kind of the game plan when you're playing like these kind of midline or frontline quotation marks healer, is that you want to keep the tempo and set the tempo yourself. Do you want to force the team to or the opposing force to have to break you and fucking throw resources at you over and over and over again to get things done? You can do that. Do you want to be unrelenting? You absolutely can do that. Do you want to be like cheeky with how you play things and start teleporting people to opposite sides of the map in order to instill pressure while you have flankers taking the opposite side? You're perfectly capable of doing that. Now, mind you, that's not. Sorry.
We can even talk about the strength of a necromancer on a bridge battle. You're talking about like 5 people on your team. Let's say, you've got 2 monks, 3 barbarians with sword and board. Your 2 monks go pole, your 3 barbarians are going sword and board. Any of them die, you can just rise and fight again 5 times. You're back up, unlimited, bring them back to life. It is just this vicious cycle of you're not going to die until I say you can die. And I was kind of thinking about it, before we were coming into the call, is if you're coming in with a group of you, the 6 of you, right? 1 necromancer and your 5 fighters who are going to have that enchantment. If we're on a kingdom battlefield, let's say it's 25 versus 25, it's pretty easy to get a squad of 6 people, hit a flank, you guys push, you take whatever, and if you're organized enough, it's really easy for you to just keep that momentum going. I don't see enough necromancers, honestly, and I think if you're using it in that sort of setting, like, it's pretty damn strong.
When the undead minion changes came out, when I was playing at Falling Fire still, there was a day where a Bremlin was playing healer, and he was just like, wow, these new necromancer changes are crazy, I'm gonna try it. And we were like, wait, this is really broken. Let's put another necromancer on the other team. Okay, now the battle game's normal-ish.
Kind of.
The undead minion changes are honestly, like, in terms of the balance of healer, I think the thing that they still haven't gotten right with how strong it is and how easy it is to abuse. But at the same time, I don't see a lot of people running it, which is surprising because I feel like it's so powerful and good that it surprises me more people aren't using it and exploiting it.
Keep in mind, the people who used to use it the most, at least back even as it came out, was like a Bremlin, myself, Cookie, because everyone else kind of like stuck to like the midline caster style. It was more than like it didn't really appeal to players as Soupy was coming, or as Sappy was still in testing. But I think now it's a perfect time to try it. I think it lends itself to a lot of really crazy player expression and really lets you kind of play as like team captain and direct the flow of fighting. So one quick thing before we go into some questions that were given to us for healer. For healing, the one thing you have to worry about, and this is more for our players who have to deal with armor, which Neverwinter, it's not fairly common, unfortunately. But it does show. It's too damn hot. But for the times where you can see armor on field, you need to understand when letting die is a good thing. 2 situations: your 6-point warriors, your paladins, and then your people who have to rely on per lives. If I'm not playing spy assassin, just let me die. Please, for the love of God, let me rest. Because I need to get my per lives back, and I can't get them back otherwise. Likewise for warriors and everybody else, I need to get my armor back. And unless you guys are packing Spidoinkle, which you're not, because you don't have it, you don't have a wizard with it, and you don't have a druid with it, it is best to leave Sleeping Dogs Lie. If it's like small points, so like 2 to 3 points, and you're like willing to give it like a point back onto a chest, a point back onto a leg, like as a last ditch effort to kind of change tempo, you can do that. And it's why I recommend people packing mend. And I understand the recommendation for experiencing mend for that reason. But you do have to keep that in mind. You have to be very careful not to overdo it, because you can't always, 1, you can't save everyone, and 2, saving somebody may actually do more harm than good because they may not actually be as combat effective alive as you would think, because how much they use.
Yeah, I think the must-haves for healer is mend, heal, release, innate.
spell.
Sever Spirit if you're not taking Dispel because it's cheaper. I think the only things outside of that is like how you're trying to specialize your healer. Like if you want to take the Ice Balls to protect yourself, or if you want to take the Circle of Protection to protect yourself, all these different things. That's where you're more deciding the direction of your build. But I think you should always be taking mends. I think you should always be taking releases. And that's even me as someone who goes to BFE as a healer. Just being able to repair your own gear along with your team's gear. You essentially become an armory that the rest of the team has to rely on.
Another spell not to sleep on as healer, because it's a great set it and forget it and I'll use it again when I have it, Teleport. Because running a team where you're pushing on like side flanks and let's say you're doing that undead minion team we were just talking about, it's always handy to just throw one of your teammates who's big and juicy into the enemy backline and say, go have fun, just go tear them up. I will say it works really well, especially on Kingdom Field when there's, a little bit more chaos, not as much people looking around at every angle. It's really easy to throw your friend who's really good with a single short and playing presence over a wall and then go, have fun, go nuts, tear up their backline, and they go 5-1, and it's like, cool, come back here, resurrect, get back over there, throw them back over the wall. So yeah, don't sleep on Teleport, because you do get it, and it's fantastic. Every healer's favorite get-out-of-jail-free card is Swift Teleport, so...
Keep in mind, actually, on that note for Swift Teleport, remember that if you're going to do that, you cannot run Priest. So yeah, keep that in mind. Priest also does pigeonhole you a little bit, so yeah.
You also can't innate your other meta magics.
The lesson of the day when it comes to healer, raise a family, and, play Necromancer.
It takes a Necromancer to raise a family.
Several families, in fact. Last question for it.
So Mithron says, I'd love to hear some discussion on why Warder is such a great choice for captain/drafter at Kingdom Battle games, due to their ability to amplify their team's strength and exploit their opposing team's composition.
I actually kind of feel like the question answers itself. Warder getting double protection from projectiles. If there's like an enemy, if there's an assassin who hasn't been picked yet, and I can see that assassin has 2 bags of throwies, I don't want him to play the game. Protection from projectiles is going to answer that question. If I see that there's a lot of wizards that haven't been picked yet, Enlightened Soul is like a really easy answer to that. If I see like there's anti-paladins, I'm going to take a lot of imbue shields. You're really just preparing your spell list to have answers to these problems. I think when it comes to the specifics of how Warder can cancel out or exploit the enemy team's composition, I think it just comes from understanding the classes and understanding what the enemy team has picked and just kind of making a educated guess on what they can do. It really is something as simple as just Enlightened Soul is cheaper than Protection from Magic, so I tend to take more of those than I do Pro Mag, but Pro Mag is probably going to be stronger on a warrior or someone who is more likely to get hit by magic balls if the enemy team even takes magic balls. And if they don't, that's even more reason to just take your Enlightened Souls. I just find it to be like such an affordable ability, because you can easily take like over 5 of them. If you take Warder, that goes up to 10. And then if you have your 2 persistence per life, that's like 10 people on your team who can just ignore magic until they're dispelled. And if you need to take more than that, like maybe you can bump it up to 6. But I don't think you need more than 10 people on your team ignoring magic. It's huge. I want to say it's self-explanatory, but I think, it's just looking at what the enemy team has or what the unpicked players have. Everyone on the team, if I'm seeing, oh wow, they've got a lot of anti-paladins, I'm dropping hardens, I'm dropping imbue shields. If I see, man, that's a lot of great swords that haven't been picked up.
Imbue shield again.
Harden.
You're not just picking like the people you're playing alongside, you're also picking the problems you're playing against, and you get to patch the holes for the problems you're playing against.
Yeah.
Oh, the interesting part is that what Eric is mentioning is a whole different skill unto itself that I want to kind of bring up. It's also like pigeonholing the composition of your opposing captain. We're going to touch on this on a drafting episode, I promise you this. But just a teaser for it right now. Not picking a person to force them to get picked on the opposing team now means that you now know what the answer is. If you know that a person there is only good at using great weapons, and you know that person is packing a giant great sword or a giant frickin' pole. They're playing anti-P. You know what they're going to do. You now know the answer to the question. So if you know the answer and you don't, you can have enough contingencies to deal with it, not picking them now becomes a viable strategy onto its own. It's building that composition, not because you don't think that person is good, but you know that you have the counters for it. It doesn't matter how good your stick skill is. If I have enough imbue shields, you're not getting through it. If my players are, playing smart, that is.
I have personally been shut down. I picked a paladin against a team of a bunch of paladins, and I had a great sword, and I felt so confident, coming onto the field. I had summer armor, 3 points magic armor all over. I was free to move at full sprinting speed as I felt, even with full 3 points of armor all over. All it took was a single paladin to be standing in front of me, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't poison him. I couldn't break his shield because he took imbue shield.
You're playing anti-P
It
for
just
context.
completely, anti-paladin. Like, it just completely shuts you down. Even if I feel like my stick skill is better than that other person, like, even if I'm like, man, like, if we weren't on the battlefield and this was a one-on-one, I'd be eating you for lunch. It doesn't matter. Like, on the battlefield, like, stick skill is very important for sure. It does make the difference. I don't want to minimize that at all. The introduction of magic into the game, it really allows you to be able to punch above your own weight. You really got to respect the amount of difference that enchantments like this can make. Which again, Dispel, Sever Spirit, that is why they're so impactful.